بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعزائي الطلاب، مادة النقد الأدبي. بداية نقول إن شاء الله هذه ظروف تمر على خير، والكل يرجع لدوامه وعمله ومحاضراتنا ولقائنا فيكم. اليوم راح أبدأ سلسلة من المحاضرات لمادة النقد الأدبي، وأرفعها إما على الإي-ليرنينج أو على اليوتيوب حسب المتاح، من أجل أن نضلنا مواصلين مادتنا العلمية، لأنه إذا كبر الملفات راح تكون صعب رفعها، فبالتالي أنا بدي أحاول الشرح يكون يعني قصير من ربع لثلث ساعة قدر الإمكان أحيط بالمادة. Okay, so let's start. The last topic that we have studied was the new criticism, or let's say practical criticism, which is based on Matthew Arnold's ideas of his concept of culture and the high approach, the best that can be said and thought of. Now we move into another realm and another part of the world, in fact, which is Russia. And here we have a literary theory that is referred to Russian formalism. Okay, and Russian formalism, from its name, it is formal, i.e. a formal method, or sometimes it's referred to formalists. From its name, we can see that this takes another perspective to study of literature, which is the study of the form, i.e. the language of literature. Before getting into the core of this theory and the assumption of this theory, let me tell you that this theory is the basic of what later on known as structuralism and post-structuralism. But that will take a long journey from Russia to Prague to France until it reached the Western world, the Anglo-American world, where the emergence of, let's say, structuralism has occurred. Now, the basic assumption of the formalists or the Russian formalism is or resides in a word that is called defamiliarization. Okay, defamiliarization is a process of making the language of the text and poetry in particular strange or unfamiliar, okay, by certain devices, sometimes poetic devices or devices. The assumption behind this claim is that to create what is called literariness, the degree of literature in a text, okay? And here we are talking about the strange language, the unfamiliar language, and the assumption or the philosophical assumption behind this idea is that readers or language will make readers' attention, i.e. it will attract readers' attention to the language itself rather than to other things. So the meaning here prevails. Let me just give you this example. Russian formalists would say that when people become aware or familiar with certain utterances, with certain ideas, okay, they lose their meaning. So language and literature renews itself through stranging the language, through making the language unfamiliar, so that the language itself attracts readers' attention to itself rather than the reader brings meanings from him or her world, okay? And here, let me just go. If you know, if you would like to follow with me, you can go to, I'm now explaining the page, okay, 33 in the second book, okay, page 33. And here I will read some quotations, okay, from the book, and then we'll see how we can move around them. So let's go to the top of the page. Okay, I'm here navigating the page on my screen, and I will start towards the middle of the page. The result of this process of defamiliarization is that it enables us once again okay, to see the world in its full splendor, or in the case maybe through awfulness. What does this mean? This means that this process of defamiliarization operates as a renewal thing. It renews meanings, it renews the language, so that each time we read, we see unfamiliar language of the text, the poem in particular, and here we understand it more fully, i.e. the meanings will prevail in this manner. Okay. The other quotation is just a couple of lines below. It starts with the social function of literature, either as the repository of the best that can be thought and said, which is Matthew Arnold's, or one of the greatest revitalizers. Okay, now is no longer the case that the Russian formalists will operate. What they wanted to know is how literature works. And I'm highlighting this sentence. Please underline this sentence. How, okay, how does literature work? يعني كيف إنه يشتغل الأدب? How it achieves its defamiliarizing effects. So now let's answer this question. First of all, the meanings, okay, of the text are there. Sometimes they become too familiar that they are confused with other meanings, i.e. people come to the text, readers come to the text, reading the text with certain assumptions in their minds, okay? And those assumptions interfere in the understanding of the text, okay? So what defamiliarization does here is that it removes those pre-assumptions. How? By making the language unfamiliar, i.e. the language becomes something like strange, something that attracts the mind to itself rather than to the external world that sometimes readers bring with them, or what we have called the pre-assumptions. Fine? So Russian formalists claim that by this way the text achieves its purpose, and they refer to this process as defamiliarizing process, which the other assumption, which is related to the first one, is that the amount of literariness, and this concept you can find in the 7th line from the bottom. Literariness is what make the literary text different from a piece of any other writing. And here we are talking about degrees of literariness. يعني خلينا نقول مثلا text A has 20% of literature in it, or literariness in it, okay? Another text has, for example, 60, 40. This amount is something that depends on the idea of defamiliarization, on the idea of the poetic devices in them. Okay, so on page 34, here we have the secret of literariness. Okay, the formalists decide was that in poetry the initial focus of the interest, اللي هو ordinary language, becomes defamiliarized. Okay, so first of all, they come to the language, and the language now is defamiliarized. And it is this linguistic defamiliarization that then leads to the perpetual defamiliarization on the part of the reader to a renewed and fresh way of looking at the world. You see the philosophy, the assumption? Then linguistic defamiliarization brings the perception of the reader in a defamiliarized way, and in this manner we see the world fresh. هاي الانalogy is very close to people who live beside the sea, okay, and within time they start hearing the voice, the sound of the waves. This sound becomes familiar, and they no longer pay any interest in it. But once an interruption of this sound, let's say يعني waves hitting the rocks, etc., people become okay aware of that, and they start to notice that. Basically, the language of the literate text, according to the Russian formalists, operates in a very similar way. How is this achieved? Again, towards the bottom of the page, it employs an impressive range of so-called devices, underlying devices. So this process of defamiliarization is achieved through what we call devices. Okay, now what is this called devices? It uses, for instance, forms of repetition that one does not find in ordinary language, or rhyme, or meter, or alliteration, or okay, all of these, figurative language, metaphors, simile, all of these are the devices that are used as the subdivisions of stanzas, okay, the change of transforming from one line to another. And throughout your readings of poems, you have noticed that sometimes they are rhymed, sometimes they are unrhymed, sometimes we have alliteration, sometimes long stanzas, sometimes a stanza that starts okay with a full stop. All of these are just mechanisms, okay, or techniques, or they to use the Russian formalists concept, devices. Those devices, the main purpose of them is to make the language unfamiliar. And as we have said, this process is the purpose of this process is to make the language itself speaks of itself. Okay. Now, the book here starts repeating itself, and for the sake of brevity, I will not repeat myself again and again. But here I want to direct your attention that, okay, the assumption of the Russian formalists is the following, that devices have inherent ability, okay, to make what we call defamiliarization. Fine. Wherever you find rhyme, then you have defamiliarization. Wherever you find rhythm, alliteration, okay, figurative language, these, okay, by default lead to what? To defamiliarization. Here, this is wrong. Okay. Now, the Russian formalists, according to this assumption, they went wrong. هلا next recording or next lecture I'll explain how this is wrong assumption, and then the response of the Russian formalists into correcting this mistake, and how this mistake leads gradually to structuralism. Okay. I intended this lecture, as I said, to be very short and brief, at around quarter, okay, so that I find it easy to upload it. Okay, please listen to it again and try to match it with the pages that I've referred to, 32, 33, 34, and 35. In a minute, let me summarize this lecture. Okay, we are now talking about Russian formalism and Russian formalists, أو the formal method. كل هاي الكلمات تعود على the concern of the Eastern school of Russia, okay, of the language of the text. While the Western world was busy with the meaning, now the Eastern world was busy with the form of the language. So they studied the form, how the form of the literary text, the language of the literary text is different from ordinary language. They keep up with what we call assumption, that is called defamiliarization, i.e., literary texts are defamiliarized. The language of the text is not familiar, is different from ordinary language. And here, okay, why is that? To attract the reader's attention to itself, to the language itself, so that readers see the world in a fresh manner. How is this achieved? By certain devices, okay, techniques that are operated for the sake of, okay, making defamiliarization in the text, اللي هم حكينا عنهم الرhythm والrhyme والalliteration والfigurative language so on so forth. Thank you.